This class is concerned with business planning. It's broken into two parts because of its length, quite a considerable amount of material. In fact, most of the material is quite straightforward, so I won't labour the slides as I go through them. It's always possible to stop the video and use the slider forwards and backwards, make your own notes and do some research into the areas that are mentioned. So I'm going to go through them fairly fast, but I think in sufficient detail to give you a proper understanding of the issues concerned. So we'll start with the purpose of the business plan. Well, it gives direction to the company. It gives an insight into where the company wants to be, and also the resources necessary to achieve that, and a rationale for the whole activity, for why the company wants to be in a certain position, to make a certain product, to enter a certain market, and so on. It also gives the investors, or more broadly the stakeholders, which include the venture capitalists, the banks, the shareholders, even the workers, the managers, could be the local community. It gives all of them some insight into the commercial potential of the business and how the business is going about its activities. It's particularly important to have a good business plan in the early stages of setup, which is known as the incubation period. This is because many businesses fail in the early stages, and many may fail because they don't have a proper perspective of where they sit in the market, what the product is capable of, the costs, the likely revenues, and so on. And the business plan exposes all of these and brings them to the fore. So the initial thoughts on planning, well, essentially the business plans to answer questions like, what are the strengths of the business proposal? What are the problems and constraints that face the business and that must be either addressed or accepted? It's making explicit, it's making clear what are the strengths of the business and also what are the problems and the constraints facing the business. Now, writing the business plan, well, the plan should be written from the reader's perspective, not from the writer's perspective. The reader is all important here. The plan is written for the reader. That's why the plan exists. So it's pointless writing it from the writer's perspective. The reader must understand it. They must have a clear picture of where the business is and wants to be, and the constraints, and so on. The core message of the plan should be emphasized. It should be clear what the purpose of the plan is and what the purpose of the business is, for that matter. And empathize with the reader and make the plan easy to follow and make it clear. Empathize with the reader. If you were reading it, what sort of plan would you like to read? One that's well structured, nicely laid out, easy to navigate, find pages, have a good index, a good table of contents? Or would you prefer something just knocked together the night before? So empathize with the reader, relate to the reader, and do for others what you'd like to do for what you'd like to see yourself. Now, before starting, the plan should be written in a manner that will appeal to different readers, the different stakeholders, the banks and the general investor. Or it could be written for the suppliers. So whoever the plan is aimed at, make sure that it's obvious to them as the reader that they are important and it's written from their perspective. Each of the readers will have different backgrounds and experiences, and each of them will have different requirements from the plan. So it's important to emphasize what's in the plan for them. Adopt a realistic approach. The plan may be accepted by some readers and rejected by others. That's the world we live in. Some people may like what's in the plan and think it's a really good idea. Others may be more skeptical and may not see it the same way. So it's important to have a realistic view of what the readers are going to say about the plan. But it's important also to learn from the criticisms. Any comments or feedback coming back are important. They should not be dismissed. The criticisms or the feedback, these are the points that can be integrated into the next draft so that those problems don't arise in the future. We learn from experience. We learn from the comments and the feedbacks. Now, the structure of the plan. Well, the plan should be prepared in sections according to its use. It may be prepared for the management and internal use because management need a view of where they're going. So the business plan is necessary for the management itself. It's also necessary for investors. Investors are not going to invest in the business unless they can see what the business is aiming to do, what its resources, what the experiences of the managers are, what the market conditions are like, and so on. So the investors need an overall picture. And it could also be that the banks need it. If the company is trying to borrow money, then the banks clearly need to know what the circumstances the business is in and what it's aiming to do. The plan may take a considerable time to write. This is not something that's going to be knocked together the night before. This is it's a difficult exercise. It's one that it's one that takes a lot of consideration and a lot of drafts, perhaps, and a lot of meetings and a lot of feedback from colleagues and a lot of criticism. It's not something that's just written straight off, and that I think is important to emphasize. Many people think a business plan can be knocked up quite quickly. It's a key management document, and obviously it should be kept confidential. It may contain commercial secrets, and so it's only really for the eyes of interested parties, for the management and for the stakeholders who are directly relevant. Now, the writing style. It should be written clearly and unambiguous. It should have a very clear style. It should be obvious what the plan is attempting to do and easy to follow. The reader should not have to do a lot of work trying to figure out what is meant. It should cover all aspects of the business proposal. It should be quite detailed, well structured, well presented, but also detailed. And all abbreviations and technical terms should be clearly explained. It's very frustrating to read a document, to find it full of almost internal slang, a lot of abbreviations, a lot of technical terms that perhaps are very clear to the management of the business, but may not be that clear to somebody on the outside. Somebody outside the business may find it very confusing. So make sure that abbreviations and technical terms are clearly explained. And there should be a good index and table of contents to navigate the document. It should be easy to find from one section to the next and cross-reference different pages and find out where the information is within the document. So it's important to have that. The key points should be clearly indicated and they should be made clear. They should be easy to understand. Use good written presentation techniques. Check for good examples of plans. Check perhaps online for good examples of plans, or go to management textbooks or go to libraries and check out what are examples of good business plans. And get ideas from various sources. Don't just pick up one, but pick up several and see if you can put together a good business plan based on an amalgam of those. Any not immediately relevant material could be moved to the appendices. Don't clutter up the document. It will be detailed, but don't make it overly detailed if possible. So if there are any reports or any supplementary documentation, include those in the appendix and reference them in the main part or the main body of the document. So appendices will contain perhaps reports or minutes of meetings or technical information. And avoid overcomplicated and detailed information. It may just cause boredom in the reader and attention will drift and the document will have failed once that happens. So avoid overcomplicated language and also technical terms, abbreviations and so on, like I said earlier. And only use tables and graphs if absolutely necessary. Pictures can be okay. Pictures are acceptable providing they're relevant. Don't just put a picture in for the sake of it, because nobody knows what it's doing there. But if it's relevant, put it in, because it adds information and the reader finds the picture useful, not just a decoration. And insert a non-disclosure agreement to protect the business idea. The business, as I said, may have secrets, and perhaps only certain people should read the document. Well, make sure that those people commit not to pass on that information or to use the information by starting a rival business, perhaps because they've been inspired by the good idea. So make sure it can be protected. Now, the basic structure of the plan. Well, table of contents, good place to start. I suppose really we should start with the title page, but we'll take that as understood. So table of contents, an executive summary, perhaps a few pages, maybe 2 pages or 3 pages, something small, which summarizes the main points. So having read the whole document, in the future someone who has read it doesn't have to go back and do it all again. They can go to the executive summary and get a synopsis of what was said, and it all comes back to mind. It brings back memories of the first read. Have sections, chapters and paragraphs, and make sure they're well laid out and indicated in the table of contents. A good summary and a conclusion. The conclusion will be very close to the executive summary, in the sense of the contents will overlap significantly. And of course, appendices for abbreviations, references and other attachments. Graphs, tables and figures should be numbered and labelled. So it's important that they are precisely referenced in the document, if they're used in the document. Preferably they're in the appendix, but they should be clearly cross-referenced. There should be a clear indication where they are and also what they're saying. Now the section headings. Well, introduction to the business idea in brief, then the company and then the market. In that sequence, the idea, the company and the market. Explain what they're about, what they are, what is the business idea, what is the company, what's the where is it located, what are its attributes, what's its size and so on. A brief overview. And the market. How competitive is the market? Is it a new product? Is it a new innovation? Or just discuss the market in brief. Also explain the management team. The business is a legal entity perhaps, but nothing will happen unless it's got a management team to organize the resources and to ensure that the production and the output take place. So outline the management team and the organizational structure. How is the management team, how do they structure the business? Is it a tall organization or a flat organization? Or what exactly are the attributes of the business in terms of its structure? How is it designed and laid out? State the business idea in detail. What strategy is to be pursued? The implementation plan and schedule should be mentioned. If it's a new investment, there must be an implementation plan. When will it start and how will it be delivered? What problems may be anticipated and how can the problems be solved if they arise? And also state the legal and the regulatory framework of the business. Is it a private limited company? Is it a partnership? Is it a sole trader? How many shareholders are there if it's a limited company? And so on and so on. The marketing plan could go in here. The business plan, try to see it as a very wide document. The marketing plan fits in. The marketing plan is very important because it tells the reader how the customer needs will be met, what marketing channels will be used, what marketing mix will be, how will the price be set, what sort of promotion will be used, the delivery, the aftercare service. The marketing plan should state topics like this, and in brief it should be included in there. If it's a much wider and more extensive document, it could also go into the appendix and be referenced. And of course financial details should go in, a break-even analysis and some sort of projections about the future, realistic projections stating precisely what are the assumptions for the projections. Forecasts are notoriously perhaps inaccurate or have the possibility of being inaccurate. They are, after all, guesses about the future. We don't know what the future is going to be. So ultimately the forecasting is sophisticated guessing. It uses statistical techniques and probability theory to try and make some sort of estimate of the future. But we like to have some indication as to what might happen. So those are included there as well. Now the company background and this section. Well, this section should obviously look at the background to the business, when it was formed, who's in the business, what it makes. It's a brief outline of its history. So it should be accurate, and it should also talk about the current state of the business. Do not exaggerate parts of the business or any aspect of the business, because A, it's lying, and B, it will be discovered down the line anyway. So it's important to tell the truth in the document. Second, describe the rationale for the existing business or for a new startup proposal. The purpose of the plan is to perhaps generate resources for a new investment. The investment may be within the structure of the existing business, or it could be a totally new setup, startup business. And look at the general industrial environment of the business. What are the attributes of the market in this case? How is the market structured? And it's important to mention the key competitors and the rate of technical innovation in the market. If it's changing very rapidly, it may deter investors who see their investment perhaps with a much shorter timescale, because the product will be out of date very rapidly. So it's important to describe the general environment in which the business operates. And also to discuss the backgrounds of the promoters. Who are the people in the business who are proposing this? What are their qualifications, their experiences, their history? Have they turned around businesses in the past that were perhaps in trouble? Have they got good managerial skills? Have they got good people skills? Can they motivate the workers? Have they got good technical skills? So an outline of those are also important. Now the background information. Well, clearly state the company's mission statement. The mission statement is a very short statement. It's probably half a side of A4 or something of that nature. It's certainly not a long document. It could be even down to a sentence. One 20-word sentence may hit it on the head. So a 20-word sentence may do the job. But clearly state the company's mission statement. This means what precisely does the company do and what are its objectives. Outline the goals and objectives of the business. State exactly what the business is trying to do, which market it's going to be in, what the product is, what it's trying to achieve with this proposal. State the key business drivers that enable the business and also outline the constraints facing the business. What is it that's pushing the business along? Is it customer demand or customer feedback that's inspired this new development? And the business plan is important to enable this development to take place. But what caused the initial drive to change the business in this way? Well, it could be consumer feedback. Consumers saying we want more of this product. So production needs to be stepped up. That could be the reason. But what are the constraints? Well, there are all sorts. It may be financial constraints. Maybe it's technical constraints. Maybe there isn't enough space to expand and the business has to move. Include any other relevant information that will help the reader. If there is anything else that is not covered in the above, this is sort of like a portmanteau term, but just include it. Just say there may be something unique for this particular business that needs to be mentioned in this context. So set it out, but set it out clearly, accurately and honestly. Now the management team and organisation structure. Well, outline and explain how the experience and qualifications of the promoters of the plan will help enable the plan and promote the business. Their qualifications, maybe they're members of professional bodies or they've got technical qualifications from universities or whatever. Or maybe they've got a long history, a lot of experience in this market and know the market intimately. In that case, state this because that is an asset. That's something quite positive. The organizational structure of the business should also be outlined. The structure of the business should promote efficiency. It should enable continuity of production and an efficient flow of resources through the business. So it's not bureaucratic and it's not wasteful and it's not time consuming. It's efficient, it does the job, and it minimizes stress and bottlenecks and hold-ups and breakdowns and so on. And state the HR policy of the business in terms of recruitment of staff, retention of staff, health and safety, the overall working environment, the stress involved in the work. State these and state how the business is aiming to improve, constantly improve and monitor aspects of the working environment. Now the business idea, strategy and implementation plan. Well, having put forward an idea to do something, to invest in something, or to use the business plan perhaps to raise resources to expand the business or whatever it is, it's important to have an implementation plan. And make sure that the vision or the mission of the business is clearly stated. The mission is the core, as I said earlier. So the core must be met. That focus that's mentioned in the mission statement should be met. Ensure that the product to be produced is clearly explained. Include drawings and pictures if possible, but you may want to insert those into the appendix and reference them. But the more information that's included in the plan, the less questions the reader should have. And if the plan is well designed and nicely delivered, cross-referenced to the appendix, there's a feeling that nothing has been hidden. Nothing is undercover. So the investor or the reader will feel it's a more honest presentation. Insert operational details as well. How can the idea be implemented? What resources are required? What additional workers or changes to existing practices or production are needed? And how long will it take, and what will be involved in making those changes? And state the proposed business USP, the unique selling point. Why is this proposal coming forward? What's the business plan trying to do? What's the unique selling point? What is it that differentiates this product from the rest of the market, and how successful will it be? State any barriers to entry. Having a good idea and a good product and bringing it to market is all very well. But if other companies are doing the same, then we're going to end up with a highly competitive marketplace. Now, some companies may be able to block the entrance of others, for example, by use of intellectual property rights, getting the legal document to say that the company is the only one allowed to make this particular product. Having a patent, or a patent, as some people say, a patent on the product. But there are different types of barriers to entry, and that's a topic in itself, and there will be a separate class on that. But state any barriers to entry, state any obstacles that the company can put in the way of others, legal obstacles that they can put in the way of others entering the market. Clearly, if the company can stop competition from arising, then they will have a monopoly aspect to their pricing, which means the product will generate additional revenues. List the available technologies, the process and ideas that will be used. So list out what is available, and list any ideas that may be implemented in the future to further refine the existing practices. Again, so the reader has an idea of what's going to happen in the future and what's in the minds of the proposers. If the technology is developed in-house, state the intellectual property protection that's taken place. As I said, it may be but a patent, register the idea so that other companies can't use it. And it should also discuss the reliability, the learning curve, and the maintenance and scalability of the technology. It's very important that the learning curve is not too steep, so that it can be up and running fairly fast. On the other hand, if it is a steep learning curve, it may deter other companies from entering the market. So there is a trade-off. If the technology breaks down, if parts of it are not reliable, Can it be fixed easily? Is it something that can be fixed? It has to be replaced entirely. Can it be scaled? Can it run at low levels of production and then be increased to high levels of production? Is that easily done? How reliable is the technology? So these points should be made again in the business plan. And outline any proposals for alliances or collaborations. It might be that the company has an idea to cooperate with another company, not join the company, not merge with the company, just cooperate over something which will reduce both companies' costs. It might be, say, for example, transport, where the two companies share a fleet of vehicles. It may be the case. But outline any ideas about alliances and collaborations. And list the details of any intellectual property issues associated with the business. Anything which, any ideas that are being used, any techniques that are being used which may involve a royalty payment to someone else, to some third party. These should be also mentioned. Now, I said at the outset that the business plan class is quite long. I've broken it into two parts. This is the first part. It's important now that you move on to the second part. But before you do that, go back over this one, use the slider, make notes, pad out your notes, and make sure that you've got a good understanding of the contents of the business plan. And then look on to class 2 of this one. So in the meantime, thank you for watching this one.